The Fix Your Fatigue podcast. Whether you can't get out of bed in the morning, your energy crashes throughout the day, or you're a biohacker looking to optimize your energy, productivity, and focus, this podcast is for you. I am Dr. Evan Hirsch, and I will be your host on your journey to resolving fatigue and optimizing your energy. And we'll be interviewing some of the top leaders in the world on fatigue resolution. Welcome. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Energy MD podcast, previously known as the Fix Your Fatigue podcast. Super excited that you're here with me today, because today we're going to be talking about some really exciting things about, are you a host or a hostage, getting off the energy roller coaster with my friend Christine Jewell. So let's learn a little bit about her. So she's a certified high performance coach and certified health coach who helps successful leaders to upgrade their lives by moving beyond the superficial into a whole new playing field where deeper love, aligned leadership, and endless adventure are the norm, not the exception. Oh, I just love that. As a mother of six, ages 6 through 20, through a blended family, a wife, and a multi-six-figure business owner, she is intimately familiar with the overwhelm and burnout that can come when chasing the dream, as well as what's possible on the other side. She loves to help people upgrade their relationships, create vibrant health by igniting their spirit, and opening their eyes to what else is waiting for them as they step boldly into a new operating system for loving, leading, and living. Christine, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I love to be here with you.
So let's start off with a little bit about your story. So you used to be a holistic health coach and practitioner and an entrepreneur, and you hit a breaking point. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I used to, well, I think once, then always, right? Once an athlete, always an athlete. I was a very competitive athlete competing at high levels. So athletic background, which got me to pursue my passion of opening my first holistic health and wellness studio. I was coaching triathlon, working with athletes, working with a lot of entrepreneurs and high achievers because I was one myself. So here I was, going hard. Everything about me when I opened that studio was about pushing. In fact, the name of my business at the time was called Push. Push Fit Studio. The minute you walked in, it was like nothing good exists within your comfort zone. Suck it up, buttercup. Everything was all over the walls like that. And that was really
Pain, no
my
gain.
motto. No pain, no gain. Open that business when I was going through a divorce from my husband. And so I had 3 young kids, and I was like so passionate about health and wellness. And coming from a marketing background, I remember like, okay, am I going to go back to the marketing world and like work 8 to 5? Oh my God, kill me. I don't want to do that. I will pursue my dream of this wellness facility, which had always been a hobby for me, athletics and coaching and stuff. And I went all in. So really I wanted to bring that up because I started that business from a fire under my ass, which I want to talk about that. The decisions we make, what they originate from, and the actions we take. So
Mm.
I opened this business in reaction to the divorce, yes, needing to provide for my kids. Like, just, I was in hustle, go, 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 racing mode. I was racing all the time. I was racing almost every weekend, training up to 24 hours a week, training 24 hours a week on top of the training that I was doing with my clients and my appointments. And then I had the 3 kids. So this went on for about 10 years of doing this and then being in business masterminds. You know how they are sometimes, right? Everything in the entrepreneur world is like, okay, now we're not only chasing medals, we're chasing money and profits and who's the top of this. And it was a very competitive, masculine oriented, just the old world system, I call it, of just everything was a push in my life. And then also in my relationships, I had been pushing after the divorce, right? I was just like, I don't need a man, but I want one, but don't get too close, So everything was like hard. Everything in my life was forced, pushed, challenged because I was addicted to adrenaline. I was addicted to chaos. I was addicted to the grind, the hustle, and I always needed stimulation, right? So, um, your body can only take so far. And so I hit a point about 3.5 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago, almost now, where I was laying face down on the floor of the yoga studio, It was in my birthday weekend, and I remember laying there, and here I was, like the super quote unquote fit athlete by the world standards, like 15% body fat and really fit, racing all the time, and had a successful business. And I could not even move my body. It was like I was stuck on this yoga floor. Every muscle in my body was like in excruciating pain, as if something was like I was set on fire from the inside. Like my fascia was like thick bands around my body holding me in place. And I just remember sitting there and I was started to cry. And I was laying in this puddle of tears because it was like this moment that we've heard that the body keeps the score. And it was a moment where everything that my body had been holding and suppressing and pushing through and grinding through, like that moment was kind of like a breaking point for me where my body just said, no more. Like, I'm not going anymore. I literally felt my body say, you're not going anymore. Like, no more running, no more chasing, no more push, no more of this business. And it was like my body basically telling me that is the moment, like, everything's got to go because I'm not doing this anymore. And it was a moment where everything had just been in force for so many years and so much pushing. And I knew, when you are getting close to that moment, but you ignore it and you keep pushing anyway, and you ignore it and you keep pushing anyway. And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back, where like after that, everything's unraveled really fast. The business pretty much burned to the ground. My relationship burned to the ground. And my body was like, yeah, we don't get to work out anymore. In fact, you don't get to run. You don't get to lift weights. You don't get to do anything. We get to sleep. We get to pray. We get to feed our body. And then we repeat. And it was at the beginning of a really, you know, deep journey of healing for me to really cultivate a new relationship with myself, with my body, with my health, with men, and redefine and reorganize everything in my life to the life that I have today, which is, I would say, full of life force, feeling really good and really alive, and operating from a place of, I mean, ease, true ease. And by the way, I want to say for the people listening is that ease does not mean you sit around on your butt and just eat bonbons and everything comes to you. It means you are relaxed in the process. You are enjoying life and you feel fulfilled and alive, and you have more than enough energy for all the things that matter.
Brilliant. So let's talk about how to get there. So, you talked about pushing. And so then what's the opposite of that? Is it pulling or allowing? What is how do we move to that space?
Well, I think that it's, a lot of people don't really realize even that they're in the push. We kind of have this delusional idea that I'm not pushing, I'm good. I'm like a high functioning adrenaline junkie. I'm a high functioning, sugar addict. I'm a high functioning workaholic. And I mean, I actually hear people say this, right? Like I can go on like 4 hours of sleep. I'm good. I can, those people, right? Like that they're
Hmm.
constantly saying like I can go on hardly eating meals, no sleep. I can just go. And so we kind of get into this delusional state where we're like, no, I'm not pushing. I'm going after my dreams. I just have a lot of energy to burn. And it's like, not really. You know, in your soul that that's not true because you wake up exhausted.
Hmm.
You wake up anxious. You go to bed, your brain can't turn off, right? You're exhausted in the middle of the day. So for me, I mean, I think like my body just completely hurt. So when I could no longer, I went from winning every race I entered to like not even being able to run down the street without having to stop. My body literally put on the brakes. And so for me, it was like getting to that point because I'm a hard headed person and stubborn like a lot of us are, that it took a total breakdown in a way for me to say, okay, I can't push anymore. And to be honest, I don't want to either. And I had no idea what the alternative was because it was terrifying to slow down. I was terrified of falling behind. I was terrified of losing my passion. I was terrified of losing my all of it, right? So it was really a time to be training and for me going within and beginning to cultivate the fire in my heart instead of the fire under my ass, right? Instead of always
Mm.
needing to have something to push you that you were afraid of or that you were trying to run away from or run towards, it was really cultivating what is it that I get to be excited about at this stage of life that is exciting to me, that is a fuel in my heart that is actually pulling me forward. And I think that if we can make that switch, it is like a magnetic force that just pulls you like a flow of a river. You know, when a river is moving fast, the river is moving with or without you. A lot of people try to get in the river and swim the opposite direction. They're swimming against the current because they like it hard. I'm like, screw this. I'm not going to be that athlete that has to swim against the current all the time, because I actually used to train like this. I used to get in the river and swim against the current. Instead, I was like, I'm just going to jump in the river and swim with the current. I can go a lot faster.
Hmm.
And that's the pull energy. Like, how about we just start tapping into the flow of the way things work and ride that wave instead of fighting everything in our life all the time?
So good.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, for sure. And I love the fire in you. Follow the fire in your heart instead of the fire under your ass.
Oh,
It's so
yeah,
good.
because the fire in your ass always requires your life force to keep it going.
Hmm. Yeah. So then the pull. So then how do we get into that state to to be able to allow that energy to move us?
Well, I think, I don't, I'm so curious if you have this. I'm sure you do, because all those years when I had this bricks and mortar facility, one of the first questions we ask people, and I still do to this day as a coach, is what do you love? Like, what lights you up? What do you really want? What do you clearly want in your life?
Hmm.
And I will tell you that over 90% of people cannot answer that question. Truly. Can you relate? Like, really, like to the point that they light up and they're excited and they really are turned on. They'll give you some answer, but it's usually what they think they want, or what they think they should want, even worse, or what their wife is telling them they should want, or what their husband, or what their whatever. But for somebody to really have that level of lit up turn on in them, I think requires a couple things. Number one, it requires that we slow down a lot, because you can't hear the whispers of your heart. You can't hear the whispers of your soul. You can't even listen to your body really clearly and what your body's telling you it needs, unless you're still enough and quiet enough. And this is why I believe God often sends us flat on our back, some sort of sickness, dis-ease that puts us flat out so we learn to listen. It's
Hmm.
like, I feel like it's the universal knock that says, shut up, sit down, be quiet, and listen. And I think that we can either cultivate that, and we can choose that and learn to meditate and slow down, just slow down the pace of life so we can begin to listen to our inner man and our inner woman, and what our heart's wanting more in our life and what our body's wanting more. Or we can wait for the universal kick in the ass, which puts us on our back, where we're forced to listen. And so it's like, I don't necessarily think you need a crisis, but a lot of people do need a crisis before they'll give themselves permission to change the pace. And I think that changing the pacing is probably one of the fastest ways to begin to give oxygen to that fire in the heart, is to get out of the same rhythm and pattern that we're in every day. We all have a pattern to the rat race that we do, right? And as you tap into more of your natural rhythm, more of that fire starts getting oxygen, and you will begin to have desires, and you'll begin to have vision, and you'll begin to have that pull, right? The next step is heeding the call and taking action.
Hmm.
And that is always the challenging piece, isn't it, for people? Because they heed the call, or they have the vision, or they get the dream, and then they hesitate.
So then is slowing down, you talking about meditation, or are you talking about letting things go, simplifying your life?
Yes to all of it. Yes, and right. I believe it's a slowing down of our pace, because first of all, I think that the much of the world, I call it a slave system. I think a lot of the world's programming is as an enslaved system, where it's using
Hmm.
our life energy to keep the system alive, right? It needs these humans frantically pumping out, producing, and it's so unnatural, and it's so against the way creation works. I'm a big fan of looking at nature itself as a great teacher. How does creation work? Not everything is moving all the time 24/7. There's seasons, right? There's seasons and cycles. And so I think the first thing is realizing we're not production factories, we're creative beings which go through seasons. I don't want to be a factory. I don't know who does, right? Um, when we're a production factory, we don't have access to that kind of fire in our heart. We have to move into creation, to being creators. And in order to do that, we got to slow down the pace of life. Number one, that might be eliminating things from our schedule, learning to say no to anything that's not a hell yes, infusing breath work, meditation, like so many practices, prayer, or, deepening your spiritual practice. And really, I think just ultimately spending time in nature with yourself is so essential, because when we disconnect from everything that is fake, inorganic, production based, technology based, and we're able to plug back into nature with ourselves in that space, we like the voice comes really fast and really clear. This is why most people have their vision. They go on vision quests, right? We go on vision quests. We go to the mountains. We go on trips and we have these epiphanies and we get all inspired and then we come back, but we plug right back into the same pace. And then the noise washes out all of that fire. And it's kind of like the Chinese elements of earth, water, wind, and fire. If we're all fire all the time and we're all air because we're always up in our head, there's no flow and there's not a lot growing. There's not a lot of life. Everything's burnt out and dried out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then take us through this concept of host versus hostage. What does that mean?
One of the things I really have moved away from is, I definitely through all of my athletic career and as an entrepreneur too, we heard, and in the personal development world, we've heard it all. Like mindset is everything. Willpower, you just have to have the strength to not put that thing in your mouth. You just have to have the willpower to, talk yourself into it. And I really think that that's a really hard way to operate. That mindset is everything, because you're trying to think yourself into it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that's been really powerful for me is really harnessing this idea that our bodies are vessels and channels. Like they're just vessels, right? That allow life force energy to flow through us, right? Everything is either adding life or taking life away. And we are just a vessel going through where we're able to receive life and then pour it back into the world, or we're consumers in a consumerist society where we eat, we consume, but we consume a lot of dead things. We consume a lot of dead television, dead information, toxic information. We become toxic and we actually reduce the life force. So, as one of my things I always say is, what if we're instead vessels and we're always hosts? We're either hosting more life force, more energy, we're hosting joy, we're hosting things that multiply, or we're a hostage to that which destroys, that which takes life away, right? And so this has been really, and we know this because when we're a hostage, when our energy is depleted and we're a hostage to anger, to resentment, we're a hostage to bitterness because we're not honoring our boundaries, we're not saying no, we're saying yes to everything. All of a sudden I become a hostage, and my life force, my energy is like, we talk about people with, I always ask them, like, where's your mental capacity? What's your physical capacity? The minute resentment takes over and takes root because they're not having healthy boundaries in their life, or they don't know how to say no to the things that are not for them, what happens there, right? Our capacity just drops to the floor. So we became a hostage, and now we're literally being used as a tool. We're just a tool, right? We're just like mindless, kind of going through the motions. And a lot of people I speak to, and I'm sure you do too in your own practice, is like they'll say, like, I'm just kind of barely going through the motions. Day
Mm-hmm.
in and day out, I get up, I do the same thing, I go to work. By the end of the day, I collapse on the couch. I don't have energy to play with my kids. I don't want to make love. I don't, it's like you're a hostage. Where is your vital life force? Or are you hosting passion? Are you hosting love? Are you hosting joy? Are you hosting the vitality and the life force to multiply everything around you? And I really like when I ask my clients that a lot, especially even when we're on calls. I'm like, are you a hostage right now, or are you hosting? And it's really, has helped me and my clients a lot in terms of, like, if I'm about to put this in my mouth, or if I'm choosing to stay up till 1 o'clock, I know I'm going to be a hostage tomorrow. I'm going to be held hostage, because held hostage to coffee, held hostage to energy drinks, held hostage to low productivity, to all of the, self bashing that goes on where we're exhausted. So I really encourage all of, the listeners to kind of think about how often are you spending time in a place where you're really hosting this optimal energy level and life force, which is now giving back, or how often are you just a hostage, you know, that your life force is being used and taken from you.
Mm, that's really good. So is that is that a place that you recommend where people start? Is looking at where they're a host, where they're hostage, and trying to move more into being a host?
I think, one of the things I like these ideas of looking at yourself as a vessel or a host or a hostage and being able to separate yourself from the I am or I have and I don't have. Because one of the things I see people a lot that actually trips them up from beginning anything is they'll say, well, I don't have any energy. I have no energy. I have no energy. And I like to say, well, there's not a lot of energy moving through you right now, right? So right now you're like you might be a hostage to, these different things, but instead of saying this is who I am or this is what I have or don't have, people label themselves and then it's like they're in the box, right? And so I
Right.
like to move away. First of all, I challenge people, if you're starting, be careful of what you speak out of your mouth and what you claim you have or don't have, right? Oh, I have this disorder. I have this thing.
Mm,
And all of a sudden they become the thing and you're confused. Now you're enmeshed. Your identity is enmeshed with that. So when you're trying to break the patterns or interrupt, there's actually a part of your psyche that's like, but that's who I am. Who am I without that thing? Right? Who
mm,
am I if I'm not exhausted 24/7? That means I didn't work hard enough. Who am I if I don't, whatever, drink on the weekends with my friends and family? I'm not lovable enough, right? And we have all these weird enmeshed attachments with these identities that we label ourselves with and also what we say we have and don't have. So, where
mm,
I start is asking people to become an observer. Start to get curious. What am I saying yes to a lot? What am I saying no to? What am I entertaining that I don't like entertaining? What am I tolerating that I no longer want to tolerate?
mm,
Right? Asking these questions. And am I adding life force or is this taking life force from me? So I actually think starting with a good set of questions that we can ask ourselves in these micro moment by moment decisions as we're going through, right? Is way more powerful than coming with a whole plan and like trying to follow this deep complicated thing. But we do life moment by moment. And I think that when people, walk into a kitchen, they're like, "Oh, I always overeat. That's what I do." Or I can't help myself. I'm a junk food junkie or whatever the thing is, like whatever they naturally gravitate towards their identity.
mhm,
So if we can begin to ask ourselves better questions, these microscopic shifts create massive ripple effects in a new direction. And you know that when your body has a different experience, even if it's a slightly different one, now we've had a new experience and the body goes, "Ooh, that's kind of cool. Maybe I want more of that," right? So we want to
mhm,
introduce more new experiences instead of focusing on what we're taking away.
mhm. So good. And it's
Yeah.
interesting as we get older, there becomes less of the beginner mind, right? We get put into these boxes of these things that we do every day, and oftentimes we become experts at these boxes, right? So I think that
Yeah.
that's so important to get back into that beginning mind, the beginner mind, which in some ways is what you were talking about initially with travel and getting out in nature, is that you start to see things that are novel, and
That's
that
really
helps to
it.
rewire the brain.
Yeah, the novelties, right? And that's why I say endless adventure. Like, really, that's the root of all my, adrenaline junkiness from the past, where I said, I was addicted to having adrenaline always because, I had some blueprints of that growing up, but I do believe we're all created for novelty, right? We thrive in new environments. That's when our creativity centers open up. That's when we have the best, intimate time with our partner or spouse. You go to new locations, you go on dates. That's why everybody loves to date. And yet, people, again, to your point, like we get so rigid and fixed. We get rigid and fixed in how we work out. We get rigid and fixed in our routines every day. We get rigid and fixed in what we eat. I think, I don't know, you probably know the stats on like people eat the same, 7 or 10 foods or something over and over again. And this whole thing about endless adventure is interesting because, again, going back to when I had my clinic, like people would come in and I'd say, "What do you want?" "I want to be able to do fun things with my kids. I want to be able to travel with my grandkids. I want to go do," like, that was their main reason, right? Is the soul, the heart wants to go and explore and play and do. And yet, we're not willing a lot of the times to be curious and be open minded. And it's like, well, which one is it? Do you want adventure or do you want to be boring and predictable day in and out? Because if you want to have spiciness in your life and adventure and fun, let's go put that on as we go experiment and play with some of these new practices. It starts here, right? Like, it's not about going on a trekking trip in the mountains. It's, yes, we get to do that. And the attitude, the energy, all of it starts here with the next meal or the next decision, the next
Mhm.
conversation we get to have. Am I willing to play in the unknown as the norm?
Yeah, it's so important. I know recently for me, when I was feeling burnt out, I came back to my values, and I have a
Mm-hmm.
very, I have a high value of fun and play. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that, And so, how
Mm.
do I incorporate that back in into my life?
I love that you have that because I think it's so underrated that we're not playing enough even as adults. Like, where did this rule come up with that you have to stop playing when you grow? Like,
Right.
you add years to your life and all of a sudden you have to get serious? Like, I'm not sure. Where did that come from? Like, right? I am all for play, so I love that. And I hear you're a really good dancer too, so
That's right. Um,
which is
so,
kind of fun because also one of the things I always tell my clients is like, start dancing with your wife.
mhm.
Because when they get rigid and stiff, I'm like, start dancing together. It'll tell you a lot about your relationship and your mobility, how flexible you are, how playful you are, or if you're, rigid and stiff and not comfortable with each other. So, anyhow, little tip there.
That's brilliant. Yeah, we actually did that this morning. I was feeling stuck and I was feeling tense, and I went into the kitchen and I told Google Home to start playing I Want to Dance with Somebody.
Ooh,
And it proceeded down this amazing 80s mix. And then my wife was in there and she was dancing and singing, and so it was, music is amazing for getting us back into that space for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, for sure.
So how do we get more done with less energy? I know that you're really good at this.
Well, this is a space I like to play in. I like to play in the space of, I know it sounds hairy fairy for some people, but like, really, what if it gets to be easy? What if it gets to be fun and highly effective and highly productive? But what if it gets to be really enjoyable and we get to enjoy the process and the ride while also allowing a lot of things to happen around us, right? So there's a lot of talk around flow state. There's a lot of books around flow state, but to flow state is a big conversation for athletes, extreme athletes and musicians and artists. Well, really, I'm passionate about flow state living for everyone. Our non-athletes, like, you could be a housewife, you could be an executive, and we can be playing in this state of flow throughout the day where we're moving with the current. So I want to bring us back to that visual that I did earlier of the river. When we look at life or a project or a company, there's a natural current that's happening anyways. There's a natural current that's moving around us that's called life, whether you're alive or dead, like, it's going to happen with or without us, right? And so I think that if I can tap into the natural current of life, and again, this requires slowing down, or this business, right? Like, how fast does this business actually need to move or want to move right now? What feels good? What pace would feel really good to me? And we can almost jump in the current, and you got to tune in a little bit, right? Am I trying to swim faster than the water's carrying me? Well, how do you know? Because you're trying to do too many things, right? And you're trying to control everything. You're trying to go faster than the current's willing to go. So you're dissatisfied with your team members. You're dissatisfied with your kids. You're dissatisfied with yourself because you're always trying to swim ahead and you're not honoring your own pace, maybe your wife's pace. And there is a lifting up and bringing people along. And then there's a lot of us that just grab everybody's hand and go, come on, you're going too slow. And we've got our kids in a million activities and our schedules are jam packed. I'm like, you're probably trying to swim way faster than the current. Or you might actually be trying to swim totally opposite of the way that the current's trying to take you. You can
Hmm.
tell your family right now needs something different, but you guys are still forced into an old system, right? And I've talked to a lot of clients where they're still doing activities or forcing their kids to do things, and it's like, it is not the time or the season for that anymore, right? The family needs something different, reconnection, or your
Hmm.
team needs something different, right? It might be a quarter where your team needs to come together and set vision and clarity, but you're trying to drive profits and growth, and you don't realize you're swimming against the current right now, because pretty soon that whole thing, everybody's going to be exhausted and everything's going to start breaking. So I like to invite people to, what does it look like? What would feel more in harmony, right? If this was easier, what is the easiest, most powerful way to go through this process? Because I like simple, clean, powerful, and it reminds me of water, flowing. And so, just a simple example, too, we were talking about before this call is my husband and I are in the process of buying a new home. I live in Canada. He's been living in the US. So we're packing up two homes. We are in two different countries and we're moving to North Carolina. And we decided at the beginning of this move, everyone's like, oh my God, you just got to get through it. It's going to be exhausting. You're going to be tired. It's going to suck. You just have to get through it. How many times do people say, I just have to get through, fill in the blank, this age of my kids, this season? And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to get through anything. I'm actually going to enjoy. This is going to be fun, to your point, Evan, right? Like this move gets to be fun. I'm excited about it and I'm going to stay in that zone. And so there's been multiple times throughout this process where we were kind of trying to swim faster than the current. And I had to pull my husband back a bit and say, you know what, babe, we're just going to take an extra night and stay overnight in a hotel for a night or two, in this moving process instead of rushing ahead. And right before I got on this call, I called my um, real estate agent. I said, can we just move the closing by a couple days? 2 days is all I needed. But I could feel that there was some contraction and resistance and pressure. And I'm like, really? Can we just move 2 days, 48 hours? Boom, everything opens back up. So it's just being able to honor too, right? Like, what am I actually pushing or trying to, pressure my way through? What if I don't? What if I
Hmm.
slow down a bit? What if we do it a little bit different? And being, again, that state of curiosity, right? Not attached to the yes or the no, but we're really playing with it. And then right away, when I said it to him, it was like, 1,000 pounds lifted off his shoulder because there were so many different things we were trying to do at the same time. And I really believe like we can do a lot, but we can't do it all at the same time. It's like we've got all these plates spinning,
Hmm.
and every once in a while you just got to kind of come in and go, okay, which plate right now gets my attention? Let me spin it and let them do their thing, and then I'll come to another one instead of trying to hold all the sticks and all the plates, and then everything comes crashing down.
Hmm.
You know, I speak in a lot of analogies, but I think it helps people put it into context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, such an
Yeah,
important reminder. It seems like if you're stuck or if you're tense, if you're anxious, you kind of need to break that cycle with curiosity and play. You kind of need to get outside of the shoulds and like all these constructs that we have. Is that
totally.
kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think some really practical questions. If we're going to be getting into curiosity, ask questions, don't make statements, right? So instead of saying, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, oh, ask a question like, what am I doing right now that is not a hell yes? What am I doing out of obligation? What am I doing that I really, if I could had 100% the choice, I would not be doing, and just start to pull back some of the things that you're forcing. And then you can even ask yourself, like, where am I forcing things in my life? Because what we force, we break. And you're forcing it if it's always hard, right? So going back to complete what I was saying earlier is if we're always swimming ahead of the current, we always feel like we're running out of time. But if we're actually swimming against the current, it's like we actually notice like everything is hard. and takes a really long time,
Hmm.
whether that's cleaning the house, launching a project at work, or, going on a date and trying to talk about something with your partner. It's like you got to know thyself a little bit and go, where am I overcomplicating this? The brain loves to complicate everything from diets to workouts to conversations. And it's like, am I just adding a bunch of complexity because my mind wants to be busy? Like, what does it look like when it's simple? What if it's simple? What if it's easy? What if it's
Mm.
fun? And then watch what happens when all that bandwidth opens up. I was talking to a client the other day that when we started working together, she was always like trying to control everything and fighting everything in her life. And all of her energy, all of her bandwidth was going to her kids and her husband and the household. And after we worked together for just a few months, like, she's like, all this bandwidth opened up for her. She's like, what do I do with myself now that I'm not like trying to hyper control them? And like, and now she's bought a new horse and she's got a new opportunity at the university where she's cultivating her own job that is like from the ground up. She gets to create, and she's got all these things blooming in her life that are fun because her bandwidth opened up so she can
Mm.
play again.
I love it. So let's talk about energy as a life source to create.
Well, we kind of tapped on it already,
Okay.
but I really encourage people to think, like, do you feel like a production factory? How many people out there, and I don't like this terminology around, like, what did you produce today? Were you productive? You want to be more productive. It's like,
Mm.
or performing. I'm a high performer. Really? What are we performing for? Who are we performing for? Are we on performance? Like, are we on stage? Like, performing can be fun. We can have a fun performance, yes. But I'd like to say, when we think about this concept of, do I want to be a production factory day in and day out where I'm just like pumping out the same thing? It's predictable and boring. Or do I want to become a powerful co creator, an empowered co creator? A lot of people who are operating in this like factory mindset, they're disconnected from what lights them up. They're not doing organic work that is true to their heart. They're usually doing work, they're following orders, or they're just doing the thing, in their zone of excellence that they know they can do in their sleep because they've done it for so many years and it's fine and they're good at it and that's what people know them for. But it's not really what they want to be doing anymore. They don't want to be doing the same thing they've been doing for 30 years, but they're a production factory now, right? So they stay in the safe space and they just reproduce
Mhm.
day in and day out. And I'm like, what if we get to move into being powerful co creators, empowered? Well, in order to be in the creative zone, you have to have space because you need a blank canvas. What are you creating, right? If you're always full, there's no room to create. So the first step of creation is to have space for vision, for ideas, for imagination, for whatever, right? And we've got to have the energy and the life force to put into it because we're literally birthing new things when we're creating. We're birthing new concepts. We're literally, it's like two coming into one. So it's easy to be a production factory. It is until it isn't because it sucks the life out of you slowly, but you just get up and you do the thing and you kind of go through life. But to be a co creator and to be creating means you're honoring the birth cycles. Like there's times of like planting seed, right? There's time of watering, there's a time of being patient, and then there's a time of the birthing, right? The heart before the harvest and stuff. So there's seasons, there's spring, there's summer, there's a harvest where we reap the benefits, and then we go through winter, which is the quiet again of the ideas coming in, and the next version or the next iteration. So I love to work with people who want to be powerful creators, powerful co-creators. That means like we get to honor rhythms and cycles, and it's not on 24/7 because that's not how anything in creation works. A factory can be on 24/7, but you're forcing a lot of things, right? Is You're forcing
Mhm.
a lot of things.
Right.
Um, so I get to ask people, are you open to ditching these old ideas of having to be producing 24/7, having to have the same level of output all the time, the same thing of playing safe, even in your zone of excellence, and starting to tap into this space of genius, potential, fun, creativity. And I believe that that's where the juiciness of life is, and that's where we can actually really begin to have fun as husbands and wives, parents and children, team members, because we're really in this play together and we're creating the new all the time. So it's fun. People want to stay around because it's fun to be there. It's not boring.
I love it.
Did I answer
So
that? Yeah.
yeah, that was perfect. Christine, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. So where can people learn more about you, consume your free stuff, to get to know you? Where would you send them?
Yeah. So, first of all, I have a podcast called The Untamed Life, and it's all about what it sounds like. You are not created to be numbed out, stressed out, sedated, medicated, and bored in your relationships or your body. So, you guys can head on over to iTunes, Spotify, and check that out. And also, if you want to go deeper and just connect with me, head on over to connectwithchristinejewell.com. I think Evan's going to pop the link in the comments of the show notes. But there are multiple ways you can connect with me. You can connect with me directly. There's a free masterclass you can jump in on. So connect with Christine Jewell if you want to learn more and enter my world. I'd love to have you be part of it. And if you want to just have a listen, head on over to The Untamed Life.
I'm going there. Thank you so much.
Over.
This was so valuable, Christine. So appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
I hope you learned something on today's podcast. If you did, please share it with your friends and family and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It's really helpful for getting this information out to more fatigued people who desperately need it. Sharing all the experts I know and love and the powerful tips I have on fatigue is one of my absolute favorite things to do. If you'd like more information, please sign up for my newsletter, where I share all important facts and information about fatigue, from the foods and supplements to the programs and products that I use personally and recommend to others so that they can live their best lives. Just go to fixyourfatigue.com/newsletter to sign up, and I will send you this great information. Thanks for being part of my community. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you're looking for help with your fatigue, you can visit my website and work with us at fixyourfatigue.com. And remember, it's important that you have someone in your corner who is a credentialed healthcare professional to help you make changes. This is very important, especially when it comes to your health. Thanks for listening.